The twin suns of Varelles hung low in the sky, casting long, wavering shadows across the sea of shattered glass. A desert forged not from sand but from the pulverized remains of ancient warships. Their hulls melted and fused into a glittering, treacherous plain that sang with every gust of wind. Heat shimmered like liquid gold above the dunes of obsidian grit, and the air tasted of ozone and old blood. Amidst this desolation, a lone human soldier knelt in the dust, his armor cracked, his breath ragged, his name, Joran, whispered only by the ghosts of those he'd lost. He'd been separated from his unit during the orbital drop, his pod misfiring and slamming into the eastern ridge, far from the designated LZ. For 3 days he'd crawled through the glass fields, surviving on ration paste and stubbornness, until the sandstorm hit. And that was when she found him. She emerged from the swirling amber haze like a myth-given form, tall, statuesque, her skin the deep cerulean of twilight oceans, her hair a cascade of pure white that whipped around her shoulders like frozen flame. Her eyes, large and luminous, glowed faintly violet, pupils slitted like a desert cat's. She wore armor of interlocking silver scales that shimmered with every movement, and at her hip hung a blade that seemed forged from solidified lightning, its edge humming with a low, resonant frequency that made Joran's teeth ache. In one fluid motion, she closed the distance between them, her boots crunching softly on the glass. Before he could raise his sidearm, half buried in the dust, its power cell long dead, her sword was at his throat, its tip pressing just hard enough to draw a single bead of blood. "You have 5 seconds," she said, her voice low and resonant, carrying the weight of command and something else, something raw, almost pained. Her accent was strange, melodic yet sharp, each syllable clipped like shards of ice. Joran froze, not just from fear, but from the sheer, overwhelming presence of her. He'd seen alien warriors before on Holos in briefings, but none like this. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a storm given flesh. Her posture was rigid, but her eyes flickered with something unreadable. Not hatred, not exactly, more like recognition. One. Joran swallowed, the movement causing the blade to nick his skin again. He thought of his sister, back on Mars Colony 7, waiting for a letter he'd never finish writing. He thought of the medbay on the Resolute, where he'd held his best friend's hand as the life bled out of him during the Ganymede skirmish. He thought of how stupid it all was, the war, the politics, the endless cycle of blood for blood. He wasn't even sure why they were fighting anymore. Resources? Territory? Pride? It all blurred together in the heat and the dust. 2. The alien warrior's nostrils flared slightly. Her free hand twitched, as if resisting the urge to reach for something. Joran noticed a scar running diagonally across her left cheekbone, pale against her blue skin. A human-made wound, by the look of it. Laser burn. Recent. His mind raced. Was she hunting him specifically? Or was he just another enemy to erase? 3. A gust of wind howled across the plain, sending shards of glass skittering like frightened insects. The alien didn't flinch. Her gaze never left his. But Joran saw it then, the faintest tremor in her sword arm. Not weakness. Something deeper. Grief, maybe. Or guilt. He'd seen that look before in the mirror, after he'd followed orders that cost civilians their lives on Proxima Outpost. The kind of look that haunts you in the quiet hours. 4. He could try to lunge. Use the last of his strength to knock the blade aside. But he was exhausted, dehydrated, half dead already. And something in her eyes told him that if he moved, she wouldn't hesitate. She'd cut him down without remorse. But then again, why hadn't she already? Why the countdown? Why give him time at all? 5. The word hung in the air like a death knell. Joran closed his eyes, bracing for the cold kiss of the blade. But it never came. Instead, the pressure at his throat lessened slightly. He opened his eyes to find her staring past him, toward the horizon, where the second sun was beginning to dip below the glass dunes. Her expression had shifted, alarm replacing resolve. A low, guttural growl escaped her lips, and she hissed a word in her native tongue that sounded like thunder trapped in stone. Joran turned his head slowly, wincing at the sting of the blade still resting against his skin. In the distance, a plume of black smoke rose into the sky, twisting like a serpent. Not from a crash, too controlled, too deliberate, and beneath it, the unmistakable thrum of heavy engines, human engines. Dropships, reinforcements, or worse, Scorcher units, sent to glass the battlefield clean. The alien warrior's jaw tightened. They burned the dead to hide their shame, she muttered, almost to herself. Then her eyes snapped back to Joran, sharp and searching. You, human, do you command fire? No, Joran rasped, his throat dry as the desert around them. I'm just a grunt. Infantry. No rank. No say. She studied him for a long moment, her violet eyes narrowing. Then why do they come? This place is dead. No value. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe they're looking for survivors. Or cleaning up. Cleaning? She repeated, the word laced with bitterness. Yes, they always clean. She finally lowered her sword, though not all the way, just enough to let him breathe freely. Get up. Joran pushed himself to his feet, legs trembling. He swayed slightly, and she caught his arm with surprising gentleness. Her touch was cool, almost soothing against his fevered skin. You will slow me, she said, not unkindly. But I cannot leave you for the fire. Why not? He asked, bewildered. I'm the enemy. Are you? She countered, her voice softer now. Or are you just another fool caught in the gears of men who play God with planets? Before he could answer, the ground shook. A deep, resonant boom echoed across the desert as the first incendiary shell struck the far ridge, lighting the sky in an unnatural orange. Glass melted instantly, forming rivers of molten silica that hissed and steamed in the cooling air. The alien warrior, whose name he still didn't know, grabbed his wrist and began to run, pulling him toward a jagged outcrop of black rock that jutted from the plain like the spine of some long-dead beast. Her name, he would learn later, was Vera of the HFY clan, one of the last true swordmasters of her people. She had been sent to this wasteland not to fight, but to recover the remains of her brother, slain in the first wave of the invasion. Instead, she'd found only ash, silence, and now him. As they sprinted across the glass field, shards cutting into their boots, Joran couldn't help but laugh. A hoarse, broken sound that startled even himself. You're saving me? He panted. After holding a sword to my throat? Vera didn't look at him, but the corner of her mouth twitched. I gave you 5 seconds. You survived. That means something. What? That I'm lucky? No, she said, leaping over a fissure filled with steaming vapor. That you are not yet dead. And the dead do not make choices. Behind them, another explosion lit the sky, closer this time. The dropships were sweeping the area in a grid pattern, methodically erasing any trace of the battle, and anyone still alive in it. Joran's stomach twisted. He knew that protocol. Deny intel, deny witnesses, deny truth. When they reached the rock formation, Vera shoved him into a narrow crevice and followed, pressing her back against the cool stone. Her breath came fast, but controlled. She peered out through a slit in the rock, her white hair catching the last rays of the setting sun. They will not stop until the glass is smooth again, she said quietly. Until nothing remains but silence. Joran leaned his head back, closing his eyes. Then we're trapped. No, she said. We are hidden. For now. She turned to him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Tell me, human Joran, why were you alone out here? No squad, no signal, just you and the ghosts. He hesitated. Trust was a luxury neither of them could afford. But something in her voice, the way she'd said his name like it mattered, made him speak. My unit was ambushed near the ruins of the old observatory. I was scouting ahead. When I turned back, there was nothing, just smoke and silence. I tried to signal command, but my comms were fried in the blast. I figured if I could reach the extraction point, maybe someone would still be waiting. Vera was silent for a long moment. Then, softly, there was no one waiting. He looked at her, startled. How do you know? Because I watched them leave, she said. 3 cycles ago. Their ships rose like frightened birds, vanishing into the clouds. They abandoned this place. Abandoned you. The words hit him like a physical blow. He'd suspected it, deep down, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. He'd been left behind. Expendable. Just another number in the ledger of war. Vera reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a small, glowing vial. She uncorked it and handed it to him. Drink. It will restore your strength. And your clarity. He eyed it warily. What is it? Starlight essence, she said. Distilled from the flowers that grow in the craters of my homeworld. Harmless. To humans, at least. He drank. The liquid was cool and sweet, with a faint metallic aftertaste. Within seconds, Warmth spread through his limbs, and the fog in his mind lifted. He felt alive, more than he had in days. "Why help me?" he asked again, his voice stronger now. She looked away, toward the burning horizon. "Because I, too, was left behind once. By my own people. They called it strategic retreat. I called it betrayal." She turned back to him, her violet eyes burning with quiet intensity. "War makes monsters of us all. But sometimes it also reveals who we truly are." Another explosion rocked the ground, closer still. Dust rained down from the ceiling of their crevice. Vera stood, drawing her humming blade once more. "We cannot stay. They will scan the rock soon." "Where do we go?" Joran asked, rising to his feet. "To the heart of the battlefield," she said. "Where the dead lie thickest. They will not burn their own fallen. Not yet." He followed her out into the dying light, the twin suns now just slivers on the horizon. The desert stretched before them, beautiful and terrible, glittering like a sea of shattered stars. Somewhere in the distance, a human dropship screamed through the sky, its searchlights cutting through the dusk like blades of judgment. Vera moved with the grace of a predator, silent and sure. Joran struggled to keep up, but the starlight essence kept him steady. As they passed the remains of a shattered warmech, its cockpit melted shut, the pilot's skeleton half exposed, Vera paused. She knelt and placed a small, carved stone on the wreckage. "A ritual. Farewell." "My brother would have hated this war," she said without looking up. "He believed your kind and mine could share the stars, not bleed them dry." Joran didn't know what to say, so he simply stood beside her, a silent witness to her grief. In that moment, the lines between enemy and ally blurred, not because the war had ended, but because something deeper had begun. They pressed on, moving through the graveyard of machines and men, the air thick with the scent of burning metal and ozone. The dropships circled overhead, their engines a constant, ominous drone. But Vera knew the land. Every ridge, every shadow, every patch of unstable glass that could swallow a man whole. She led them through a labyrinth of wreckage, always staying one step ahead of the fire. Hours passed. The night deepened, and the twin moons of Varelli's rose, one silver, one crimson, casting an eerie, dual-toned light over the battlefield. Joran's strength held, but exhaustion gnawed at the edges of his mind. Vera, too, moved slower now, her steps heavier. Even warriors of her caliber had limits. They found shelter in the hollowed-out shell of a downed command carrier, its interior scorched but intact. Inside, the air was stale but cool. Vera lit a small bioluminescent lantern, its soft blue glow reflecting off her blue skin and white hair, making her look almost ethereal. She sat against a bulkhead, her sword across her lap. "Rest," she said. "I will keep watch." Joran sank to the floor, his back against the cold metal. "You don't trust me to watch?" "I trust no one," she said simply. "Not yet." He nodded, too tired to argue. But as his eyes drifted shut, he heard her whisper something in her native tongue. A lullaby, perhaps, or a prayer. And for the first time in weeks, he slept without dreaming of fire. When he awoke, the crimson moon was high. Vera was still awake, sharpening her blade with a smooth, black stone. The sound was rhythmic, almost soothing. "You ever think about what comes after?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. "After what?" she replied, not looking up. "After all this. After the war." She paused. "I used to. Now I think only of the next sunrise, and whether I will live to see it." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "That's no way to live." "It is the only way to survive," she countered. Then, after a beat, "But perhaps you are right. Perhaps we should dream, even in the dark." Outside, the desert was silent. The dropships had gone. For now, the fire had stopped. But they both knew it would return. War was not so easily satisfied. Vera stood and offered him a hand. "Come. There is something I must show you." He took it. Her grip was firm, cool, steady. She led him to the rear of the carrier, where a hatch had been blown open. Beyond it lay a crater deep and wide, formed by a plasma strike. At its center stood a single structure, untouched by the devastation around it. A stone archway, ancient and weathered, covered in carvings that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. "What is that?" Joran asked. "The Gate of Echoes," she said, her voice hushed with reverence. "Built by the first ones, long before your kind or mine walked the stars." They say it shows you not what was, but what could be. He stared at it, skeptical but intrigued. You believe that? I have seen it, she said. Once, after my brother died. It showed me a different path. One where I laid down my sword. And did you? She looked at him, her violet eyes glinting in the moonlight. Not yet. They stood there for a long time, the silence between them heavy with unspoken thoughts. The desert wind whispered through the archway, carrying with it the faintest echo of voices. Human, alien, mingled together in a harmony that should not exist. Joran took a step forward. What if we both looked together? Vera hesitated. Then slowly she nodded. Perhaps the gate will show us something new. As they approached the archway, the air grew thick with energy. The carvings began to glow, pulsing with a soft, golden light. Joran felt a strange pull in his chest, as if the very fabric of possibility was bending around them. But before they could step through, a new sound split the night, a high-pitched whine, growing louder by the second. Vera's head snapped up. Scorcher drone, she hissed. They've found us. She grabbed his arm. Run! They sprinted back toward the carrier, the drone's searchlight sweeping the crater behind them. Joran's heart pounded in his chest, his legs burning with effort. Just as they reached the hatch, the drone fired. A searing beam of plasma struck the archway, shattering it into 1,000 glowing fragments. The gate of echoes collapsed in a shower of light and dust. Vera pulled him inside and slammed the hatch shut. The carrier shuddered as the drone circled overhead, its sensors probing the wreckage. They're not just cleaning up, Joran realized, breathless. They're erasing history, erasing hope. Vera's expression hardened. Then we must become the memory. Outside, the drone's whine faded, moving on to another target. But they both knew it was only a matter of time before more came. The fire would not stop. Not until everything was ash. In the dim light of the carrier, Joran looked at Vera. Not as an enemy, not as a savior, but as a fellow traveler in a world gone mad. And for the first time he saw not just a warrior, but a woman carrying the weight of 2 worlds on her shoulders. What do we do now? He asked. She met his gaze, her sword gleaming in the lantern light. We survive, and then we fight back. Not for our sides, he thought, but for something better. And as the twin moons watched silently from above, 2 unlikely allies made a silent vow beneath the shattered stars. A vow not of vengeance, but of change. The desert held its breath. The war raged on. But somewhere, in the heart of the wasteland, a new story had begun. The Scorcher drone's fading whine left a silence so thick it pressed against Joran's eardrums like water. Inside the gutted command carrier, dust motes drifted in the pale glow of Vera's lantern, catching the light like tiny stars adrift in a forgotten sky. He leaned against the cold metal wall, his breath still ragged, his mind racing faster than his pulse. The destruction of the Gate of Echoes replayed in his head, the way the ancient stone had flared gold for one impossible second before crumbling into ash. It hadn't just been a monument. It had been a promise. And now it was gone. Vera stood near the sealed hatch, her back straight, her fingers resting lightly on the hilt of her humming blade. She didn't speak, but her shoulders were tense, coiled like a spring. The loss of the gate had struck her deeper than she let on. Joran could see it in the way her white hair fell over her eyes, shielding them from the dim light, as if she didn't want him to witness the grief there. They knew, she said finally, her voice low and rough. They knew what it was. Who? Joran asked, though he already suspected the answer. Your high command, or theirs. It doesn't matter. The ones who pull the strings from orbit while we bleed in the dust. She turned to face him, her violet eyes sharp again, the vulnerability buried beneath layers of resolve. The gate wasn't just memory. It was a bridge, between past and future, between your kind and mine. Joran swallowed. I didn't even know it existed until tonight. Of course you didn't, she said, not unkindly. They erase what they cannot control. And hope is the most dangerous weapon of all. A sudden clang from above made them both freeze. Metal groaned. Something heavy scraped across the carrier's hull. Vera extinguished the lantern with a flick of her wrist, plunging them into near-total darkness. Only the faint crimson gleam of the larger moon filtered through cracks in the hull, painting jagged stripes across the floor. Climbing drone, she whispered, pressing a finger to her lips. Scouting, not burning. Yet, Joran nodded, his muscles tensing. He had no weapon, no armor worth mentioning. just the tattered remnants of his fatigues and the stubborn will to keep breathing. But as he watched Vera move like a shadow toward the rear of the carrier, something shifted inside him. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was choosing. He followed her silently, stepping over twisted cables and shattered consoles. She paused at a collapsed maintenance shaft, half buried under debris. With surprising strength, she heaved aside a scorched bulkhead panel, revealing a narrow tunnel that sloped downward into darkness. "This leads to the old coolant reservoirs," she murmured. "Buried deep, shielded. They won't scan this deep. Not unless they suspect someone's down there." "And do they?" he asked. She gave him a look that was almost amused. "You're still breathing, aren't you? That makes you suspicious." He almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he ducked into the shaft behind her, the cool air a relief against his sun-scorched skin. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees, their movements muffled by layers of insulation and rust. Somewhere far above, the climbing drone's claws scraped against metal, searching, probing. They descended for what felt like hours, though Joran knew it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. The air grew damper, colder. The scent of ozone gave way to something older. Wet stone, stagnant water, the faint tang of algae. Finally, Vera stopped and pushed open a rusted hatch. They emerged into a vast underground chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. The floor was a shallow pool of iridescent liquid coolant residue, long since inert, but still glowing faintly with residual energy. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting a soft blue-green light that reflected off the still surface like a drowned galaxy. "This place," Joran breathed. "My people built it," Vera said, stepping carefully onto a narrow walkway that ringed the pool. "Long before your ships darkened our skies. We used it to store water during the Great Drought. Later, it became a sanctuary." She walked to the center of the walkway and knelt, placing a hand on the metal grating. "There's a passage beneath the pool. Leads to the old observatory ruins, the one your unit was ambushed near." Joran's stomach twisted. "That's deep in human-controlled territory." "Was," she corrected. "Now it's a graveyard. No patrols go there. Too many ghosts." He thought of his squad, Lieutenant Rivas with her dry wit and steady hands. Tarn, the rookie who'd cried the first time he fired his rifle. Kilo, who always carried a photo of his daughter in his breast pocket. All gone, swallowed by fire and silence. "Why take me there?" he asked. "Because that's where they left it," she said simply. "Left what?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "The truth." Before he could ask what she meant, a low rumble shook the chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling. The coolant pool rippled, sending ghostly reflections dancing across the walls. "They're drilling," Vera said, her voice tight, "trying to flush us out." She moved to the edge of the walkway and pressed a sequence of symbols carved into the railing. With a groan of ancient machinery, a section of the floor slid open, revealing a dark shaft beneath the pool. Cold air rushed up, carrying the scent of earth and something metallic, like old blood. "In," she ordered. Joran didn't argue. He dropped into the shaft, landing in ankle-deep water. Vera followed, sealing the entrance behind them with a soft click. Darkness swallowed them whole. For a long time, they walked in silence, guided only by the faint luminescence of Vera's skin. A natural trait, she'd once told him, evolved to help her people navigate the deep caves of their homeworld. The tunnel twisted and turned, sloping upward now, the air growing warmer, drier. Eventually, they reached a ladder. Vera climbed first, pausing at the top to listen. After a moment, she pushed open a hidden panel and slipped out. Joran followed, emerging into the ruins of the Varelian Observatory. Moonlight streamed through broken domes and shattered arches, illuminating the skeletal remains of telescopes and data consoles. The place was eerily beautiful, a temple to knowledge, now a tomb. But what caught Joran's breath wasn't the ruin itself. It was the bodies, dozens of them, human and alien, lying side by side in neat rows, covered in white burial shrouds woven from desert grass. At the center of the courtyard stood a single obelisk, carved with names in both human script and the flowing glyphs of Vera's people. "You did this," Joran whispered, his voice thick. "Not me alone," she said, walking toward the obelisk. "Others like us, deserters, medics, pilots who refused orders. We've been gathering the dead for weeks, burying them together. No flags, no ranks, just people." She stopped before the obelisk and ran a hand over a freshly carved name. Human letters, but unfamiliar. They tried to tell us we were enemies. But death doesn't care about borders. Joran walked among the rows, his heart pounding. Near the back he found them, his squad. Their shrouds were marked with small tokens. A ration wrapper for Tarn, a faded photo for Kilo, a broken comms earpiece for Rivas. Someone had cared enough to honor them, to remember. He sank to his knees, tears blurring his vision. Why? He choked out. Why would anyone do this in the middle of a war? Because someone has to, Vera said, standing behind him. Or the war wins. Not the soldiers. Not the commanders. The war itself. It consumes everything, truth, mercy, memory, until there's nothing left but ash and silence. He looked up at her, moonlight catching the silver strands in her white hair. You're not just a warrior, are you? I was, she said. Now I'm something else. Something necessary. A sudden crackle broke the silence. A human comms frequency. Faint but clear. They both froze. Vera pulled a small device from her belt, a scavenged relay unit, and held it up. The voice was distorted, but unmistakable. Any surviving units, respond. This is Captain Voss of the Iron Resolve. We are conducting a final sweep of Sector Gamma. If you can hear this, activate your emergency beacon. Extraction window, 30 minutes. Then we burn it all. Joran's breath caught. Voss, hardline, ruthless. The kind of officer who'd glass a village to kill one sniper. Vera's eyes met his. They're giving you a choice. He shook his head. It's a trap. They don't want survivors. They want witnesses silenced. Then don't be a witness, she said. Be a voice. He stared at her. What are you saying? I'm saying you have a chance to tell the truth. To show them what really happened here. Not the sanitized report they'll file. The real story. The one with graves and shared shrouds and a gate that showed us another way. But how? He asked. Even if I get on that ship, they'll debrief me, scrub my memory, ship me off to some rehab colony. Not if you transmit first, she said, holding out the relay unit. This can piggyback on their comms burst. Send a data packet, encrypted, untraceable, to every neutral news hub in the sector. Include coordinates, images, names. Joran took the device, his hands trembling. They'll kill me. Maybe, she said. Or maybe you'll live long enough to change everything. He looked around at the graves, at the names carved in stone, at the quiet dignity of this hidden sanctuary. This wasn't just a burial ground. It was a rebellion, a refusal to let the war define them. He nodded. Okay, but not alone. Vera raised an eyebrow. You want me to come with you? No, he said. I want you to stay. Guard this place. Keep it safe. In case I fail. She studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached up and unclasped a small pendant from around her neck. A disc of polished obsidian, etched with the symbol of the Azure Fong clan. She pressed it into his hand. If you die, she said, let them find this on you. Let them know a warrior of my people stood with you. Let them wonder why. He closed his fingers around it. It was cool, smooth, heavy with meaning. They moved quickly after that. Vera led him to a hidden cache near the observatory's eastern wall. Scavenged gear, a functional sidearm, a portable transmitter. She helped him patch his armor, her movements efficient but gentle. When he was ready, she handed him a canteen filled with the last of her starlight essence. For clarity, she said, and courage. He drank. The warmth spread through him, steadying his nerves. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. The first hints of dawn painting the horizon in streaks of rose and gold. Somewhere above, the Iron Resolve circled like a vulture. Joran activated his emergency beacon, the red light blinking steadily on his wrist. Then he opened the relay unit and began uploading the data. Images of the shared graves, coordinates of the gate's ruins, audio logs from deserters on both sides, Vera's testimony recorded in her own voice. As the upload bar crept forward, he turned to her one last time. If I make it, I'll come back. She gave him a small, sad smile. I'll be waiting, beneath the stars, or beneath the glass, whichever comes first. The sound of dropship engines grew louder, closer. Searchlights swept the ruins. Joran took a deep breath, stepped into the open, and raised his hands. Above him, the sky burned with the promise of fire. But in his pocket, the obsidian pendant hummed faintly, as if echoing the pulse of a different kind of weapon. one forged not from steel, but from truth. And somewhere in the ruins behind him, a blue-skinned woman with white hair watched in silence, her sword sheathed, her heart open, ready to guard the fragile seed of something new, even if it meant standing alone in the ashes once more. The dropship descended in a roar of thrusters, kicking up glass dust that glittered like falling stars. Joran stood motionless, the obsidian pendant warm against his chest, the data packet now racing through the void toward 100 waiting ears. Soldiers in scorched armor rappelled down, weapons raised. But Captain Voss himself stepped forward, eyes narrowed, scanning Joran like a puzzle he couldn't solve. "You're the only one?" Voss demanded. "For now," Joran said, voice steady. "But I'm not the only truth." Before Voss could react, alarms blared inside the dropship. A comm officer shouted, "Sir!" Encrypted burst just hit the neutral networks, Galactic Concord, Free Press Syndicate, even the Azure Enclave. It's everywhere." Voss's face paled. He turned on Joran, fury flashing, then froze. Behind Joran, emerging from the ruins with her sword sheathed and hands open, stood Vera. Her white hair glowed in the dawn light, her blue skin radiant against the gray ruins. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was the proof. Voss hesitated. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. "Stand down," he ordered his troops, voice rough. "All units, stand down." News of the shared graves, the Gate of Echoes, and the deserters' truce spread like wildfire. Within hours, ceasefire requests poured in from both sides. The high commands denied involvement, but public outrage and undeniable evidence forced their hands. The Scorcher fleets were recalled. The burning stopped. Weeks later, under twin suns now watched by peacekeepers instead of snipers, Joran and Vera stood together at the rebuilt Gate of Echoes, this time forged from salvaged ship hulls and desert stone, inscribed with names from both species. Around them, humans and Varelians worked side by side, turning the sea of shattered glass into a garden of memory and hope. Joran had been honorably discharged, his record cleared. Vera was named Envoy of Reconciliation by her clan. They weren't heroes in the old sense, no medals, no monuments, but their names were whispered with reverence in classrooms and council halls across the sector. One evening, as the crimson moon rose, Joran handed Vera a small data chip. "My sister on Mars sent seeds," he said. "Earth flowers. Said they bloom even in thin soil." Vera smiled, the first full, unguarded smile he'd ever seen, and pressed the chip into the newly turned earth at the base of the gate. "Then let them grow," she said. And they did. Blue petals unfurled beneath alien skies, roots weaving through glass and grief, binding two worlds not by war, but by choice. The desert still remembered the blood, but now it also sang with life. And in that quiet miracle, Joran and Vera found something rarer than victory. Peace, earned not with swords, but with shared silence, stubborn kindness, and the courage to believe that even in the ashes, something beautiful could rise. Beneath the twin suns, the last Scorcher ship vanished over the horizon, its fire silenced. Joran and Vera stood hand in hand at the edge of the newly planted garden, where earth flowers and Varelian star blossoms intertwined in quiet harmony. The Gate of Echoes, rebuilt by both peoples, hummed softly, not with warning, but with promise. News of their truce had sparked rebellions of compassion across the galaxy. Soldiers laid down arms, not from defeat, but from hope. No more graves were dug in secret. No more truths were burned. Back on Mars, Joran's sister received a letter, not of loss, but of a blue-skinned friend who taught him how to heal. On Varelis, children learned human lullabies alongside ancestral songs. The war didn't end with a treaty, but with 1,000 small choices to see each other as more than enemies. And as the crimson moon rose, casting its gentle light over the sea of shattered glass, now blooming with life, they knew peace had finally taken root.